If you're just joining us, I'm Mike McClanahan. This is the Impact Sine Die Special, and standing by, I have the House Republican Leader, Representative Drew Stokesbary of Auburn. Representative Stokesbary, thanks for your time this morning. Let's start with your perspective on the budget as it stands right now.
You know, it is day 105. We've been talking about the budget for all 105 days of session and probably a couple months before that. The budget that we're about to vote on today has been public for less than 24 hours so far. I think that does a disservice to the public, and there should have been a lot more transparency. Moreover, you know, I think I'm really disappointed with the direction the budget did take. We are looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 billion in new taxes on the people of Washington. And that's just the taxes to fund the operating budget. That doesn't include all the taxes and fees, including a new gas tax and diesel tax to fund the transportation budget. But $8 or $10 billion of taxes. This is the biggest tax increase in Washington state history, despite Democrats' attempts to target those taxes to wealthy Washingtonians and big businesses. They're actually going to hit ordinary, everyday Washingtonians through things like higher housing costs, higher health care costs, higher grocery and food prices. That's unacceptable. We want to make Washington more affordable. That's what Republicans set out this session trying to do, make Washington more affordable. And unfortunately, through the biggest tax increase in Washington state's history, despite the attempts and claims that it's going to hit wealthy Washingtonians and big business, it's just not true. It's going to hit regular people, and your cost of housing, fuel, gas, groceries, healthcare, all going to go up, unfortunately.
What's your response to proponents of the increases who would argue that the cuts that would have had to be made would not have been acceptable to Washingtonians?
Well, I think that's just not true on two counts. One, their budget does include cuts that should be unacceptable to Washingtonians. Democrats attempted to slash postpartum Medicaid coverage for new mothers from 12 months to 6 months. This was after a bipartisan push just a couple years ago to increase from 2 to 12. 48 states in the country have 12 months of postpartum Medicaid coverage, and House Democrats voted to slash that to 6. That's an unacceptable cut. House Democrats voted to redirect money for age, blind, and disabled individuals, redirect money that should be going to single mothers receiving child support, and take some of that money back to the state. So House Democrats are balancing their budget on the backs of new moms, single moms, the age, blind, and disabled. Those are unacceptable cuts. And then conversely, there are lots and lots of new spending items in the budget that are simply not necessary. The fact is, we have more revenue coming in this year than we spent last year. Revenue is going up. We don't need to cut. We just need to stop buying new things. I've been saying all session long, this is like Clark Griswold's Christmas family vacation. He thought more money was going to come his way, so he ordered a giant pool installed in his backyard. And then the money didn't come his way, and all kinds of hijinks ensued. But if he had just stopped 10 minutes into the movie and called up his pool guy and said, "Oh, shoot, I'm not getting my Christmas bonus. Just cancel the pool. Maybe I'll call you next year if things turn around for me," everything would have been fine. Same thing with Washington State. The money is still coming in more than we've ever had before, just not quite as much as we once expected. We don't need to cut services. We just need to dial down how much new spending we're doing. Unfortunately, Democrats' budget both dials up all the new unnecessary spending, and in order to make individuals feel the pain and create a feeling of budget crisis, they cut for no reason at all things like postpartum Medicaid coverage, age, blind, and disabled services, child support for single moms and single dads. That's what I think is pretty unacceptable.
What has been your experience? What's your take on the new governor and just the dynamics in play this year?
Well, you know, Governor Ferguson has been a breath of fresh air. I've been pretty open telling people on my side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle and the governor himself and the general public that for once it is nice to have a governor who lives on this planet, who is grounded in the same reality that I am, and that I can have a rational, intelligent conversation with. We've been missing that for 12 years, so that's welcome. I also appreciate the governor's willingness to stick his neck out from the rest of his party a little bit and say that he wants to be a governor for all of Washington and not just just the far left progressive base. I think that's also pretty welcome and greatly appreciated. I'm going to be watching closely what he does with the $8 to $10 billion tax package that's about to hit his desk, and the budget that I think both makes some cuts we shouldn't have made and also continues a bunch of unnecessary new spending increases that we probably should have said no to for the next year or two. I appreciate the governor went out and publicly said that he would veto a $12 billion tax package. I agree with him that $12 billion is pretty ridiculous. But an $8 or $10 billion tax package is about 80 or 90% of that. And 80 or 90% of ridiculous is pretty gosh darn ridiculous. So if I were governor and I said that $12 billion was too high, I'd feel a little embarrassed to sign my name to something that was, say, $9 billion. That's also pretty high. But we'll see what he says. And I do appreciate that he's shown more to leadership, more interest in facts, and more pragmatism and charisma than his predecessor.
Are there policy areas that you are pleased with in terms of the work that was done this year?
There's a few things on the margins. One of the things that Governor Ferguson said in his inaugural remarks was that he really wanted there to be $100 million in funding to hire new police officers. This was something he campaigned on, and it looks like that's going to be in the final budget. The exact source of the funding isn't my preference. Some of it's going to be new local tax dollars, and I think that's unnecessary. I think we should have made this a state priority with state funds. I think there are some state funds going to it, and so it's an improvement. It's not what I would have done if I were in charge, but it's better than what has been done in the past. So that's a good start. The other one, it's also a topic that the governor mentioned in his inaugural address, and that is securing an ag fuel exemption from the CCA for farmers who are having to pay higher costs in fuel thanks to the nearly 50 cents to $1 in higher fuel costs that have resulted from the Climate Commitment Act. That promise was not fulfilled. Talking about contrast between the new governor and the former governor insisted that the problem was solved and that farmers were complaining about nothing and ecology was doing its job. That simply wasn't true, and the new governor acknowledged that in his first moments in office, admitting that government screwed up, hadn't delivered on the deal that was struck, and he promised to fix it. So it looks like that bill is going to make it to his desk. Is it perfect? No. Are there some more things I wish we could have done for farmers, especially smaller farmers? Absolutely. But I do think it's a step in the right direction, and something that we can walk away being pretty proud of.
Within your caucus, what issues were the most contentious or divisive?
There wasn't a lot that was contentious or divisive within our caucus. We were pretty united in the fight for three main things. We wanted to make Washington more safe, we want to make Washington more affordable, and we want better public school outcomes. In terms of public safety, we had not a bad session, actually. Like I said a second ago, we were able to help come up with a way to create $100 million in funding to hire and retain police officers. Not perfect, but a pretty good start. That won't solve the entire law enforcement shortage issue, but again, a good start. We also were able to defeat, with the help of a few common sense Democrats, pretty much every bill that came up on the House floor that would have gone lenient on criminals. There were several bills that would have reduced sentences on the front end, and several bills that would have allowed criminals in jail to get out of jail early and reduce sentences on the back end. I think every single one of those bills that went soft on criminals, we were able to kill on the House floor. So that's pretty good. So we didn't necessarily make Washington more safe, but for the first session in a while, we didn't make it less safe. So that's a good start. Affordability is one that's a little disappointing. Like I said at the top of this segment, the Democrats passed the biggest tax package in Washington history, and many of those taxes, the B&O tax and sales tax on services, will ripple through the housing and healthcare and food industries, and make regular people pay more for all of those things, and that's too bad. So thanks to Democrats' tax mania, Washington's probably more unaffordable now. And unfortunately, we didn't do a lot to create more accountability for public schools either. We did provide some funding that they needed, especially with regard to special education, but we still need to figure out how we're ensuring better results and not just better funding. We need more funding and more results. Democrats are pretty good at finding more funding, but they're not very good at ensuring we get better outcomes and better results for students and their families, and that's something that we need to keep working on next session.
We're almost out of time, but if you could close us out with two things. One, your guess on the odds of a special session at this point, and two, anything we didn't add that you wanted to summarize.
You know, I think the odds of a special session are pretty low. I've always thought they were pretty low. You know, there's certainly a few reasonable Democrats in the House that we work with from time to time, but the sad truth is that history has shown that when the Majority Caucus goes into their closed-door meetings, they often come out with 50 votes for some of the worst policies that you can imagine. So I've always thought that they would end up getting the votes, but we've worked pretty hard to try to push them in a less aggressive direction. So I think at this point it's really up to the governor. And like I said a second ago, I think the big question is, if $12 billion was ridiculous, is 80% of ridiculous still ridiculous? I would say yes, but that'll be for Governor Ferguson to decide.
Well, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time, Representative Stokesbary. We do appreciate your perspective. And stay with us. We will return with more interviews after the break.